Ayya Sobhana does it differently.
Greetings, everybody. Now, I think I can see some people here. And I'm sharing a screen about the sutta that we'll be discussing this time. Just 1 second. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddham dhammang sanghang namasami. Dear friends, this sutta discussion today is a bit of an experiment for me. I hope I will come up to the high standard of education and learning and practice that has been set by Ayya over these many months. I also am trying to take a big sutta and summarize it in a short amount of time. So I'm using these slides. I'm wondering, can others mention if you see the right slide? It's a Culavedalla. Is that the one that's visible on your screen? Okay. Well, so let's go ahead with this wonderful sutta. First of all, the story of this sutta. This is a dialogue between the layman Visakha and his former wife, the bhikkhuni Dhammadinna. Visakha had a chance to hear a Dhamma talk of the Buddha in Rajagaha at the Squirrels Monastery, and he listened very closely and intensely to that Dhamma teaching, and in listening to the teaching of the Buddha, he progressively obtained levels of enlightenment, stream entry, once returner, a non-returner. And then after coming up to the level of a non-returner, he went back to home, and he went to his wife and said he was very nice, but he wasn't the same as before. he said, darling, please accept all my property. From today forward, I'm not going to take part in any of the affairs of this house. And Dhammadina retorted, so it said, this is not in the sutta, but it's in the Dhamma story that goes with the Dhammapada verse. She said, who would swallow the spittle that you have thrown up? Then she asked permission to enter the order and become a bhikkhuni. He gave permission. She became a bhikkhuni. She went away to a small monastery and practiced and became a fully enlightened arhat. Then she came back to Rajagaha, and there her former husband approached to ask her questions. So this is a very high-level conversation between one who is a non-returner and one who is a fully awakened arhat. The sutta is very compressed in just covering very important ideas with a few words. So it's given in a series of questions and answers. For the sake of time, I'm not reading out this, this is the question, this is the answer like that. I'm just giving the summary of what she explained to him. The first question was about Sakkaya. What is Sakkaya? And Sakkaya is translated by Bhikkhu Bodhi as identity. The word in Pali is Sat and then Kaya. The first part, Sat, S-A-T, is from the verb to be. So it's what exists. And then Kaya is a body. It's not in the sense of exactly the same meaning as the rupa, which is the material form that you do in the five khandhas, but the body is a. I'm going to mute Pushpa. The body is like a group of things or an aggregate of things that appears to be compact. Like you could say a body of soldiers, which is made up of many things, or you could say a sangha of monastics, which is made up of many members, but it has like a group identity. So what is identity? And the answer is these five aggregates affected by clinging: the material form, the feeling, the perception, the volitions, and the sense consciousness. The Panch Upadana Khandha. Pancha means five. Upadana is clinging. Khandha is an aggregate. You know that like certain stones are considered like aggregate of stones. It's like several different kinds of material that are stuck together. So already we're in very deep water in terms of where the problem is of dukkha. The Buddha said in the Turning the Wheel of Dhamma, he said, he gave the description of dukkha, birth, aging, sickness, and death, being with what you don't like, being separated from what you like, not getting your wishes. All those things are dukkha. And then he said, in brief, the panchupadana khandha dukkha. The five aggregates are dukkha. So this is his summary. So in this case, we're seeing exactly the same presentation of the Four Noble Truths, but it's given in a context of identity. instead of in the context of dukkha. So you'll see in the next section that it's what is identity, the origin of identity, the cessation of identity, and the way leading to the cessation of identity. In a certain way, when you think of, there's two different Pali words for existence, existing. One is called bhavati, which is sometimes translated as to become. And there's something that's very tiresome about becoming, that as long as we're going around on samsara, we're destined to become one thing after another. And then the other Pali word that's got almost exactly the same meaning is ati, to be. And at least to my mind, ati has a little bit more of a static, fixed meaning, and it's almost like a concept. So if I said, I am a bhikkhuni, see, it has the I am, it has the concept, and it has a certain quality of grasping where my mind has grasped onto the identity of bhikkhuni, saying that's what I am, even though that's really a very small aspect of the entire reality of what's happening. And then the other word, the bhava, you could say, in 2006, I became a bhikkhuni. You see how this is a very, it already so quickly, it takes us into really thinking about the questions about our existence. And if you said you became a bhikkhuni, or you became a doctor, you became a student, you became a graduate, you got married and you became a wife, or you became a husband, already there's something that's getting to be like a concept, creating some kind of a concept, which is not a real representation of reality. So like if somebody was, say if somebody gets married, they have to sort of make it real every day in their relationship with their partner. Or if somebody is a monastic, if they're a bhikkhu or a bhikkhuni, one has to make it real every day in terms of practicing, living up to the noble ideal of that particular label. But if you just take, here's the label, I have an identification card, and it says I became a bhikkhuni on this day, and now I'm a bhikkhuni. That already is taking us a little bit away from reality. So the Sakkaya. These in the natural history or natural psychology, you could say that these 5 aggregates are naturally building up to a sense of an identity, a sense of a self. And that's one of the ways in which identity is suffering, is because it's constantly throwing up or contributing to this delusion about a self. This is from an article by Ayya. The material form, the body, he says that is answering where I am. So if you say, from this fathom long body from head to toe, this is the individual, and it's defined by the outer boundary of the skin. Or even if you said that I'm defined by my position in relationship to my relatives, family, and friends, nevertheless, those are actual individuals who are existing in material space. And so I'm sort of like situated physically. And so then that is creating, in a very basic sense, what is the self? The self is that living individual that occupies that physical form. Then the feeling is more like an adverb. How am I feeling? Again, it's making a contribution to the sense of the self. And then the perception is answering this question, what am I perceiving? And so in that case, it's creating there's an object out there that I'm attending to, that I perceive. And when there's an object, there's a kind of a duality between the subject and an object. You know, in a grammar, in a sentence, the subject of the sentence is the one who's doing the action. And then the object of the sentence is the one that the action is done to. So if I see the light, then the light is one thing outside of me, and then I am the other thing who's receiving the light. Then the volitional formations, the Pali of this is called sankhara. It's got a very wide meaning, but in this context, it's especially about those volitions or intentions. Why am I acting? And this is where we are crossing the boundary into creating karma. So in the ethical idea of Buddhism, those deeds that we've done on purpose, intentionally, have an ethical quality of being wholesome or unwholesome, skillful or unskillful. And that has a strong determining effect on our subsequent experience and our subsequent state of existence. And then last of all, the sense consciousness, that's vijnana in Pali. Analio says, whereby I am experiencing. That is, there's this light of awareness that illuminates each objective field corresponding to a particular sense faculty that allows us to have an experience, to be awake, conscious, to be conscious, to having experiences. And we know that we have these experiences because of consciousness. So all of these things come together and they actually synergize together with each other, and they become the sense of self. So if any one of them breaks off or becomes disabled, nevertheless, the others can still sort of fill the gap to create the sense of self. So if I lose my eyesight, I still have a self. If I have some kind of a brain injury wherein I'm
Hey, I
emotionally.
turned the picture off because it's just 4 people here, including Ayya Sobhana, and she does it by projector. And so what she shows you is what she's talking about. Like, you know, how are the 5 aggregates contributing to identity? Material form, the body, where am I? Feeling, how am I feeling? Perception, what I am perceiving. You see, so it's totally different. And
Thank
so
you. Is that Christy speaking?
if you want to come in here.
Okay, so this is how the 5 aggregates contribute to identity. And I'll show you a little movie, and then you can see that this is a flock of birds. And it looks like a sort of a shape. I don't know what you think it looks like. It looks like a cloud, or it looks like a wave, or it looks like something that's coming and going. And when you look into like modern psychology, this is kind of like what they feel that the brain is. It's like millions and millions of little events. And they all appear to be a single shape. So I thought I'd give you that. That's an idea. So that's a delusion. If you think like this is some kind of a thing, like a ghost or some kind of a thing which is changing its shape, actually it's 1,000 different little things. Then he asks, what is the origin of identity? And now this is exactly the same answer that you see in the description of the Four Noble Truths. It is craving, tanha, which brings the renewal of being, pona, bhavika, bhava, that's existence, accompanied by delight and lust, delighting in this and that, meaning delighting in this kind of existence or that, like I want to become a bhikkhuni, I want to become a lawyer, I want to become thin, and so on, or I want to go to heaven, or I want to be reborn as in a wealthy family, like that. That's what the craving is doing. There's the craving for sensual pleasure, kama tanha, the craving for being, bhava tanha, that's the craving to have, like be born in heaven or be born in some state. And then the craving for non-being, if you don't like the state you're in and you want to destroy that state. So if I say, I don't want to be fat, I don't want to be sick, I don't want to have a body, I don't want to be human because, so I'm trying to get rid of one existence as part of getting a different kind of existence. That's the vibhavatanha. That's rooted in hatred for the state that we have and wanting to get rid of it. And the other was greed for the state that we don't have, wanting to get it. That's the origin of identity. And then it says, what is the cessation of identity? And again, this is exactly the same as the cessation of dukkha. The remainderless fading away and ceasing. The giving up, relinquishing, letting go, and rejecting of that same craving. There are many places, if you read the suttas, that they talk about cessation, or they talk about fading away and cessation. Fading away is viraga, cessation is nirodha. And whenever you see those words, you should always remember this is talking about craving, the fading away and the cessation of craving. And then the way leading to the cessation of identity is exactly the same as the way leading to the cessation of dukkha. Just this noble eightfold path: right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right livelihood. He asks a few more questions about clinging. This is the upadana kanda. He wants to know if the clinging is the same as the 5 aggregates, or if it's something separate from the 5 aggregates. And the answer given is that it's neither the same or something apart, but the craving is the desire and lust regarding the aggregates. So the aggregate is like the object, and you have your clinging through your desire and lust for that object. And the important benefit of this lesson is that if they were identical, you would be stuck, you would never be able to get out of suffering. But because they can be separated, even while it's possible to awaken to obtain liberation and to have still have a body, feeling, perceptions, volitions, and consciousness, and yet to be free, to be liberated, to be enlightened, because those two things are separated and not identical. Now he asks about identity view, which is Sakkaya Ditthi. Sakkaya is identity, Ditthi is view. And this is explained in other sutras as different ways of identifying with the five aggregates, any one of them individually or any combination of them, thinking this belongs to me, or this is me, or I have this aggregate, or this aggregate is part of me, or I am part of this aggregate. So there's many different combinations, sort of multiple different ways in which it can be regarded. We can regard these experiences as self. So Sakkaya Ditthi is the first of the fetters. There's 10 fetters that are keeping us tied in samsara. When all those 10 are destroyed, then we are fully enlightened. When the first 3 are destroyed, then we have obtained the fruit of stream entry. The first one of them is this Sakkaya Ditthi. And so I'd say for those of us who still do not have stream entry, good advice to pay attention to how this identity view works. The Buddha said that the first noble truth should be fully understood. So it's definitely worth it to study dukkha, how dukkha arises, how it works, to study this identity view, how it arises and how it works. There's something that actually it's not in this sutta, but I'll mention it anyway. Ways that this identity view can come about. If you say something is mine, that's when your craving is activated. When it says, I am this, that's when your conceit is arising. Or when you say, this is myself, or you could say, this is my essence. This is my eternal, unconditioned, essential essence. That's when the view has come to be. And in many sutras, the Buddha gives this kind of a way you can talk to yourself with everything you experience. You can say, this is not mine. This is not me. This is not myself, or this is not my soul. This is not my essence. A lot of times people get confused about what the self idea is, because in the modern world, it doesn't translate that easy in English. But we know that everything arises because of causes and conditions, and that everything in samsara is constantly changing. So if you think that there's something somewhere within yourself, like a diamond inside of a jewel box, something within yourself which is not conditioned by anything else, but has its own sort of absolute existence, and which is eternal, and which is also beautiful and blissful. That thought is what the ancient texts were referring to when they talk about atta. And when the Buddha taught about anatta, or an unself, he's saying that thing is just an appearance. It's not a real thing. He asks of more about the Eightfold Path now. So we're going along this progression of the way to the end of dukkha. He asks if they are conditioned or unconditioned. The Eightfold Path is conditioned. So the Eightfold Path is not the same thing as Nibbana. Even somebody who's far away from Nibbana, even if you don't even have actually have an understanding or a vision or a view of what Nibbana is, it's still possible to get a hold of the Eightfold Path. And the Eightfold Path is to be practiced. So it's a result of your effort, your intention, your listening, your being present, and your undertaking these practices. Those are all the conditions for the Eightfold Path. And it said that the Eightfold Path brings you close to Nibbana, but it doesn't bring you into Nibbana. It's everything that's coming up before, within the realm of conditioned world, leading you up to Nibbana. So that's why it's called conditioned. And there's this division into virtue, concentration, and wisdom, right livelihood and right effort, right action, right speech, right action, and right livelihood are considered parts of virtue. Right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration or samadhi are considered parts of samadhi, or you could say concentration or meditation. And then the right view and the right intention or right thought are considered parts of wisdom. There's something that was pointed out by Bhikkhu Bodhi. He said every beginner's book about explaining Buddhism always is giving this three-part description of the sections of the Eightfold Path, but there's only one sutta in the entire Pali Tipitaka which gives this explanation, and that's the one that we're looking at right here, the Culavedalla Sutta. Now he's asking about meditation. And there are many different teachings in different places about meditation. This is a useful one. The unification of mind is how she explains it. That's bringing the mind again and again to one simple object of meditation. So it's a practice of having the mind have one focus of attention and not being distracted. And then she says the four foundations of mind are the basis of samadhi, of meditation. That's making note of these different aspects within the experience of meditation. And then she says the four right kinds of striving, that's the right effort, are the equipment of meditation. That will be avoiding or preventing unwholesome states of mind that have not arisen, abandoning unwholesome states of mind that have arisen, arousing wholesome states of mind or wholesome factors of the mind that have not yet arisen, and for those wholesome states of mind that have arisen, stabilizing them, extending them, and making them grow and develop to the full perfection. So we see the right effort and the right, the four foundations of mindfulness are the two parts of in the Eightfold Noble Path. Then she says the fourth aspect of this lesson, the repetition, development, cultivation of these states is the development of samadhi. So this is, if you wanted to have a course of meditation, you could very beneficially just take this one paragraph in the sutta, and you could spend an entire retreat just reflecting and learning and trying to sit with the full meaning of what's pointed out in this brief section. Or if you were a Dhamma teacher and you wanted to teach, you could teach a whole meditation retreat just organized around these 4 points of what meditation is. Now, I don't want you to be scared, because it seems to be going into deep water, into things that many meditators have, even advanced meditators have not experienced. But Visakha and the Arahant Dhammadina are both deep practitioners. The question is about sankhara. And now before I mentioned sankhara as being volitional formations. And in this case, she's talking about three processes which fade away during deep meditation within jhana and within the stages of immaterial meditation. These experiences become weaker and weaker and weaker until they disappear completely. It doesn't mean that they've disappeared, it's that they've disappeared from awareness. So you could say, if somebody is doing a meditation on the breath and they have very good samadhi, one-pointedness of mind on the breath, and they are giving attention to the arising, the in-breath and the out-breath, and anything else that comes in through the 5 physical senses, they ignore it. So if the door knocks, the telephone rings, or the bird sings, or the dog barks, you've made the determination to ignore that because you're only paying attention to breath. Then it doesn't mean that the dog didn't bark, or that the bird didn't sing, or the doorbell didn't ring. It means that you don't experience it because you've gone into a concentration where that's been blocked away from what you're experiencing within this meditation. So what's she explains is the bodily formation is in-breathing and out-breathing. So there's a stage of meditation where in-breathing and out-breathing disappears. This is associated, according to the commentary, with the first jhana. Different teachers say differently about it. But there is a state where, you've been all this time just focusing on the breath in your meditation, and then the mind goes to nimitta, or goes to the contemplation of the mind, and you're not really experiencing the breath anymore. Then the verbal formation is associated with, this is called vitaka vichara, placing the mind and keeping it connected. Again, this is part of jhana meditation. So at the second jhana, the vitaka vichara goes away. So this verbal mental thought, the television in the mind, which is continuously talking to you, has gone silent. And then the mental formation, the chitta sankhara, these are all the states tied up with the mind. And in particular, on the next paragraph, it mentions perception and feeling, which are 2 parts of mentality, and that those disappear. And that is said to cease at the very end, when one has attained the 9th jhana, the highest level of meditative attainment. Now he's asking now about the cessation of perception and feeling. This is where a lot of students start to want to skip over this part, because they say, well, I'm not anywhere close to getting to the level of meditation where perception and feeling disappears. I'm not anywhere close to, I'm just not close to that. And it is said in the commentary that this cessation can only be attained by one who is a fully enlightened arahant or a non-returner who has mastered the 4 jhanas and the 4 immaterial meditations. And the method of doing it is explained in the Visuddhimagga, which is commentarial. You enter into each one of those attainments in turn. You go into that attainment, You emerge from that attainment, you contemplate that experience, that meditative experience, as being impermanent suffering and not self. But you should not cling to it saying, this is my attainment. If you cling to it and claim it as my achievement, then you've taken the wrong direction and defeated the whole purpose. And so she's just explaining here that you're not exercising willpower or decision like, I shall do this, entering this jhana, and I shall do this, departing from this jhana. But instead, you kind of set up your meditation process before sitting for meditation. And then the meditation arises, and then it comes to the end according to what you have determined and what conditions you set up in your mind beforehand. But you're not doing like a self-control at that time. There's a way in which I think it's very useful to think about setting this out as an aspiration. And that is when we remember how feeling and perception are contributing to dukkha for an unenlightened and uneducated person. When feeling comes along, it's like the gasoline to light the fire of craving. And then when perception comes along, under the influence of delusion and under the influence of feeling, perception can grasp onto something which is not completely true, that's only partially true, and cling to a certain stereotype cartoon of what's happening in reality. And so in that case, the Vedana Upadana Kanda, the Vedana affected by clinging is part of dukkha. Perception affected by clinging is part of dukkha. And you can notice long before you ever become enlightened that through your meditation practice, the strong bonfire of feeling can become more and more calmed, can become more fading away, more something you can see it just arises and disappears, but it doesn't demand a response anymore because it's fading away. The feeling is fading away, fading away. And the same way, also your perceptions, your clinging to perceptions is gradually fading away as a result of your practice. So you don't get caught up in the propaganda about your opinions about things, but instead you experience a lot of things, say, well, this might be true. It might be true at the moment, but it might be changing. It might be true, it might be not true. It might be true from one perspective, but it might be different from another perspective. And all of the things that seem to be real, we see them in a way that's like very open-minded and flexible. And this is because in a certain way that perception is kind of like fading away because we're not clinging to these, I'll call it opinionated perceptions. So I think setting our practice along that direction would be setting us in a way which is a pattern that could be a pattern that we could fall into if we're so blessed that we could fall to a level of awakening. Now, he asks about 3 kinds of contact. And the 3 kinds are emptiness contact, signless contact, and undetermined contact. Now, the Bhikkhuni is telling us about what it would be like to enter Nibbana. And there's relatively few suttas in the Pali Canon that speak in such a direct way about what it's like entering Nibbana or coming close to Nibbana or experiencing Nibbana. What's it like to be a fully enlightened arahant? It's said that in the commentary, or no, not the commentary, in another late text called the Patisambhidamagga. Some people think it's a later text, but it's part of the Pali Canon. Someone who has a strong power of faith and finds it easy to contemplate the anicca quality, then when they are approaching Nibbana, this consciousness of the signlessness of what they experience as being without a self is the first thing they see as they're entering into Nibbana, into enlightenment. Then the other kind of person, someone who has a very strong ability for calmness, may take dukkha, or suffering, as their main focus. And then for that type of person who's done that type of practice, when they enter Nibbana, the consciousness enters the desireless gate. So there's no more desire because of the many lifetimes or however much time they spent contemplating about dukkha. And then, excuse me, I should have said the first person, the person who's got a faith in that they're contemplating impermanence. And so the signless quality is associated with impermanence, because whatever the nimitta, the concept that you assign to something, which is kind of like put a pin in a butterfly into, put it into your collection, that instead, because of anicca, you enter the signless, that the nimitta doesn't come up anymore and you don't grasp on that anymore. And then the last person is the one who comes to emptiness of the self. That's a person who's got a strong tendency towards wisdom. And throughout their practice, they take anatta, or non-self, and they would be contemplating both internally and externally. They would be focusing on voidness, or on whatever they experience as being empty as self. And then that person, when they awaken, they that's what they would experience. Then the Bhikkhuni says, when emerging from the cessation of perception and feeling, the mind inclines towards seclusion, tends to seclusion, leans to seclusion. Now she's still talking about Nibbana here, and this is the seclusion from all the conditions. When we were much earlier, we would have gone to the meditation center or to the forest to be secluded from town. We would have let go of all of the afflictive and negative thoughts in order to become secluded from negative states of mind. And then finally, at the end, we come as secluded from this ever repeating cycle of creation of existence through conditions. That's the seclusion she's pointing to. The next section about Vedana is also a very popular section. It's kind of come back to something which is more easy for us to see in our ordinary life. As I said earlier, I think that Vedana is kind of like the fuel that can ignite an explosion of grasping. She defines them as three kinds of Vedana: the pleasant, whatever is pleasant and soothing or comfortable, whatever is unpleasant and painful or hurting, and then what is neither one, neither pleasant or unpleasant. She gives that definition. And then she points out how unstable they are, how they can't be relied on, because the pleasant feeling is pleasant when it persists and painful when it changes. The painful feeling is painful when it persists and pleasant when it changes. And the neither painful nor pleasant feeling is pleasant where there's knowledge of it and painful when there's no knowledge of it. I'm going to come around to that later. So there is this instability in feeling. Back in when I was first starting to encounter Buddhism, I suffered a lot because of my emotional problems and so on. And impermanence seemed like the most wonderful thing, because I could say whatever pain I'm feeling, it won't last forever. But then also, whenever something nice happens, there's kind of a stage we go to that, when we get something good, we feel a little bit frightened or a little bit sad, because we know that this nice thing that we got is not going to last forever. It's only going to be temporary. So it's like each one is containing its opposite. If a person, this is underlying tendencies, anusaya, it's literally something which is close to and underneath. So something that's an unconscious tendency that may come up when there's the right kind of a trigger or the right kind of condition. So the underlying tendency for lust, that's raga, that's like the sensual desire, is a pleasant feeling, underlies pleasant feeling. So someone who's a gourmet who just loves to have a good life, that's their main purpose in life is pleasure. If that's what they want, they can get a lot of pleasures if they cultivate this aspect. The underlying tendency to aversion underlies painful feeling. So this can happen, both be conditioned by how we live and the choices we make in life, and it can be even conditioned by our genetics and how we are when we were born. Like some babies are very happy, and some babies are very fussy. So if from a previous existence or from their genetics or something, they got this tendency to aversion. So even a little pinprick causes a lot of upset, because that tendency to aversion causes it to be painful. And then the underlying tendency to ignorance underlies neither painful nor pleasant feeling. So this would be, you could say, like the baby who's got an extremely placid, neutral tendency that doesn't get disturbed by anything, doesn't get excited about anything, doesn't feel very happy, doesn't feel very negative. They're just kind of like staying in neutral. Now, a person who is on a roller coaster of strong, pleasant, and unpleasant feelings may have a tendency to not even notice the moments when they're getting a neutral feeling, because their mind has become so obsessed and locked into obsessively thinking and paying attention to something that happened that gave them a strong feeling. And then all the neutrals come along and they're just like actually oblivious. It's like they're in a blackout. 90% of the time they're in a blackout. 10% of the time they're in a strong feeling, and that's all that they remember. Now, Dhammadina specifies that these three tendencies of aversion, lust, aversion, and ignorance do not necessarily underlie all feelings, but they should be abandoned. So this is our work. When we feel painful feelings, or when we get lost in a daydream of, or lost in an addictive relationship with pleasant experiences, then we got to examine and see if we can look at within, look underneath, and can we see that there is an underlying tendency? And if we can see it, can we find out how to let it go? And can we train the mind to let go of ignorance by being present, being more mindful, being awake, paying attention, just see moment by moment, seeing how it is, even when the feeling tones become more subtle. There are certain feelings that can be free from the underlying tendencies. These are described here, and they're also developed in a different sutta, which is called the Salayatana Vibhanga Sutta, the discourse on the, it's number 137 in the Middle Length Discourses, the analysis of the basis of contact. And they give the same thing there. So here, the pleasant feelings that we can get in meditation can be safe. You could cling to those feelings and take them as me or mine, and in which case you've taken a wrong turn and it won't have the desired effect. But it's possible to experience that kind of pleasure without it being an addictive thing, without it being a cause of future suffering, without it being a danger. And then there's a painful feeling, which is the grief based on renunciation. This is when, like, you can see what this path of practice is leading to, but we're not there yet. So, like, affliction still arise in us. And we've done so much effort, so much work to purify and to know how to abandon and let go of these afflictive negative states of mind. Why these negative states of mind are still coming up in us? Why do we still have more work to do? And so that kind of painful feeling is a motivation for us to continue making the effort, continue in faith to do the practices, knowing that as we continue going along, that those negativities will eventually disappear. And then the neutral feeling is especially in the fourth jhana, they describe it, it has a very strong quality of neither pain nor pleasure. And that's a state of mind where the factor of equanimity can be very clearly seen and very clearly developed. It's a state where the mindfulness can become extremely pure because of that equanimity. And there's a wonderful opportunity there for the development of wisdom, because in emerging from that kind of meditation, this great clarity of mind exists, and then you have an opportunity to look and see and to understand, to come out of ignorance. Now, this is a part of this discourse. This is the last part I'm going to speak to you about. And I feel my understanding of it is a little bit my own invention. It's not exactly what I heard from other teachers or what I saw in the commentary. He's asking about a counterpart. A counterpart is patibhaga in Pali, and that's explained in the dictionary that it has two meanings. It's either the meaning of an opposite, or it's the meaning of being the next step in a progression, or the fulfillment of one step is going on to the next step. My idea with the patibhaga is actually all of them can be taken in the sense of a progression or a fulfillment to the next step. So painful feeling is the counterpart of pleasant feeling. So after you get a certain amount of pleasure, then you get some pain. Pleasant feeling is the counterpart of painful feeling. So these two feelings are oscillating. So instead of leading to awakening, they're just going back and forth, and one causes the other and one causes the other. So they come in a roller coaster. So you can't, in this world, especially being in a human birth as opposed to being in a hell realm or a heavenly realm, you get a mixture of pleasant and painful feelings, and it's always going from one to another. And so this is like, as part of the, like what it's like to not be awake, not be enlightened. And then the ignorance is the counterpart of neither painful nor pleasant feeling. And it has that meaning in the sense that in the other sutta, the Buddha describes it as being a householder's equanimity as somebody who's just dull. They're just like kind of stupid. They don't care. They're like indifferent. They've given up caring. They're just going through the motions. Or as I said, that you don't notice because you don't look. Okay. So now, in these three are all on the side of going around in samsara. And the next one is where we come out of samsara and get on the path towards awakening. It says true knowledge is the counterpart of ignorance. Now, most of the teachers that I saw and the commentary says this is just opposite. Knowledge and ignorance are opposite to each other. But my idea is, if you don't know the answer, like why is there old age, sickness, and death? You don't know. Then you develop spiritual urgency. Then you investigate to try to discover the answer. And then your noble quest is arising from recognizing what you don't know. And so we should not feel depressed or defeated because of the things we don't know, because of the places that we're caught into deluded thinking. But instead, every time that we recognize that there's some deluded thinking, some ignorance, or some like a lack of mindfulness, like something happened and like we missed it completely because we weren't paying attention, that then this is it's like this is the doorway, this is the opportunity to investigate and to go then towards on the path that leads to true knowledge. And once you get to true knowledge, you're not going back to ignorance. And so in this way, this is why I'm saying this is leaving the cycle of going around in samsara, getting on the path which is going forward towards nibbana. Once you come to true knowledge, you're not going backwards to ignorance. And then deliverance, this is a vimutti, sometimes called a freedom, is the counterpart of knowledge. And in that word deliverance, it's sort of like a summary for a sort of a set of steps that you sometimes see in the formula as what's happening just before nibbana, that you have jnana, seeing and knowing things as they really are. Then comes nibbida, or becoming disenchanted with samsara, experiencing the fading away of lust, experiencing cessation, experiencing this liberation, being free from the asavas, the internal defilements and fetters, and experiencing not that it's gone forever, we're not going to pick it up again. And then from there comes to nibbana. Nibbana is the counterpart of deliverance. Then he asks, what is the counterpart of deliverance? What would be the next step after nibbana? Is what Dhammadina, what Visakha is inquiring about. And here she says, now you've gone too far. Nibbana has no counterpart. The holy life is grounded on Nibbana, culminates in Nibbana, ends in Nibbana. So there's no further steps after Nibbana. The dear friends, after this, Visakha has a chance to go to the Buddha, and he then reviews what he had heard from the Bhikkhuni Dhammadina, and the Buddha says, yes, that's correct. That's exactly how I would have explained it. And so we have in this sutta, I think for me, the most useful thing is the in-depth analysis of a different type of in-depth analysis about the five khandhas, and how they work, how they operate, and particularly about the khandha of Vedana, how it works, how it operates, and taking a different explanation, a different view of the pattern of awakening, the pattern for one who is going towards enlightenment, a sort of a map of what would be experienced at that level. I'm going to now invite, if Ayya Sudina, who's in the room with me, has anything that she wants to add or correct about this this discussion, or if others have a question or a comment. Ayya, would you want to say anything? No, she doesn't want to say anything. Ayya Sudina is here. She's just returned from Vancouver, and she will be taking up going forward. For those who are in the Sutta study group who've listened to Ayya Sudina's Sutta discussions, I think that somebody should come forward and help to facilitate the Zoom access for the Carolina Buddhist Vihara. I think that they've been borrowing somebody else's paid Zoom account to be able to give a teaching of longer than 40 minutes. And so this is something that I hope is going to continue, so that Ayya Sudina will continue many times with her great teachings.